with the odd rude interruption. Box Boilers sponsors the weather on GB News.
It's our biggest Great British giveaway to date. You could be driving away with this brand new Benamar Primera motorhome. This 4-berth home from home comes complete with integrated kitchen and bathroom areas and has all of the tech you'd expect from the latest 2025 model. We'll also give you an incredible £30,000 in tax-free cash to make sure that any adventures you take in your new motorhome are taken in style. For a chance to win, text WIN to 63225. One entry costs £2.50 plus one standard network rate message, or text BONUS to 63225. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start at £2.50. Call 0903 686 3232. Calls cost £2.50 plus your network access charge. Or post your name and number to GB16 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 4 p.m. on the 31st of October. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation,
No,
because the failure is
you're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back.
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
And we do not shy away from the difficult stuff.
Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood.
So join me on Jubes & Co. weeknights at 6 p.m, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
From the school run to the home run, watch a new show for all of Britain.
He can say whatever he wants.
A straight-talking show where all voices are heard.
And, you know, when are we going to stop talking about smashing the gangs and actually do it?
With the stories that matter from every part of our country.
There's a bit of a crash landing there for your Chancellor.
Bold, fearless and standing up for you. That's me, Martin Daubney, 3 p.m. till 6 p.m, weekdays, here only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Westminster's full of talk, but out here, it's the real world.
Am I allowed to talk now?
No, that's it. This is where it matters, real people and real lives. That's what politics is all about.
In fact, has Trump made a good start? No.
Straight answers, no spin, and just a couple of pints.
How many fingers have I got up?
About 10. So join me for Lee Anderson's Real World every Friday at 7 p.m, only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello, good evening. It's me, Jacob Rees-Mogg, on State of the Nation tonight.
Finally, my lords, this is not an assisted dying bill. It is an assisted suicide bill.
Tomorrow, the House of Lords will debate the assisted suicide bill. Its backers say it is compassionate, but the reality is it's unsafe, unworkable and open to abuse. With hospices cutting services and social care crumbling, the repercussions of this law would be murderous. Also tonight,
The United States and the United Kingdom have done more good on this planet than any two nations in human history.
Donald Trump concluded his state visit by joining the Prime Minister at Chequers today, and as always, we've heard about Britain's famous special relationship with the United States. But does America care? Is the special relationship something to be nurtured, or is the USA too ruthless in pursuing its own interests for it really to matter? Plus,
China.
Donald Trump isn't breaking crockery, of course. He's talking about the country and used his state visit to confront the China threat in some ways. It comes as prosecutors drop espionage charges against two men, including a former parliamentary researcher accused of spying for Peking. As Westminster remains alert for threats from China, does President Trump have a role to play in keeping us all safe? And in today's book club, if you've ever wondered why rats can influence elections and if fish and chips can indicate voting habits, then Professor Philip Cowley's new book, The Smallest Room in the House, is one you will want to read. I spoke to Professor Cowley about the 50 oddities he identified in our political system, and some of them surprised me, and I expect will surprise you too. State of the Nation starts now. I'll also be joined by my most forthright panel, the assistant editor and parliamentary sketch writer of The Spectator, Madeline Grant, and the historian and broadcaster, Dr. Tessa Dunlop. As ever, I always want to hear your views. Mailmog at gbnews.com. But now it's your favourite time of the day, the News Bulletin with Sam Francis.
Jacob, thank you, and good evening to you. Just after 8 o'clock, well, the top story tonight, breaking news in the last hour or so, that an Eritrean man will be deported to France tomorrow after losing a High Court bid to block his removal under the government's one-in, one-out scheme. He arrived by small boat just last month, but today a judge ruled there was no serious issue to be tried over his claims of being a trafficking victim. The court found his credibility was severely damaged after giving differing accounts of his journey through Europe. It follows the first migrant deported under the scheme this morning, an Indian man flown to Paris. Well, US President Donald Trump has meanwhile urged Sir Keir Starmer to take a tougher line on illegal immigration, even suggesting military involvement. Speaking alongside the Prime Minister earlier, Mr Trump said uncontrolled migration destroys countries from within. He praised his own record, though, claiming the US went from millions crossing illegally to now zero.
It doesn't matter if you call out the military, it doesn't matter what means you use, but it's going to destroys countries from within. And we're actually now removing a lot of the people that came into our country. It's a very hard chore. We were given a very, very bad hand. Millions of people came in from prisons and mental institutions. We have to remove them. And we are removing them. We have no choice, and I feel very strongly about it.
Well, at the same press conference earlier today, Prime Minister Sir Keir Starmer said Britain fiercely protects free speech, but that there is a line when it incites real harm. He said freedom of speech is a founding value the UK will always protect, but he stressed the limit is on those who peddle paedophilia and suicide to children online. GB News presenter Bev Turner pressed him on disagreements with Donald Trump and raised concerns over reports of thousands of arrests each year under communications laws.
I draw a limit between free speech and the speech of those that want to peddle paedophilia and suicide social media to children, and therefore I'm all for free speech. I'm also for protecting children from things that will harm them, paedophiles, those that peddle suicide, which has had a terrible consequence for individual, particularly teenagers. And so that's the balance we strike.
Also tonight, UK interest rates have been held at 4%, with the Bank of England warning we're not out of the woods yet as inflation rises nearly twice its target. Two members of the bank's 9-strong committee voted for a cut, but the governor said any future moves must be gradual and cautious. The bank expects inflation to fall back to its 2%, though food costs remain stubbornly high. All eyes, of course, now turn to Rachel Reeves' budget in November, with pressure mounting over Britain's growing debt bill. And 3 people have been arrested in Essex on suspicion of spying for Russia. That's according to the Metropolitan Police. A 41-year-old man, 46-year-old man and a 35-year-old woman were detained. All 3 arrested under the National Security Act on suspicion of assisting a foreign intelligence service. They were later released on conditional bail. Counter-terror police say foreign recruitment in the UK is on the rise, echoing warnings from MI5 about Russia's GRU using proxies for sabotage and arson. The Wagner mercenary group, proscribed as a terrorist organisation last year, has already been linked to an arson attack on a Ukraine-related warehouse in London. That is the news on GB News. I'll be back with you at 9 o'clock. Now, though, it's over to Jacob.
Welcome back to State of the Nation. Tomorrow, the House of Lords will conclude the second reading debate on one of the most dangerous pieces of legislation to come before Parliament in years, the Assisted Suicide Bill. Supporters say it's compassionate, but the reality is that it's unsafe, unworkable and open to abuse. It is not a government bill. It wasn't in any party's manifesto. It doesn't benefit from the Salisbury-Addison Convention. It is a private member's bill, which means the Lords are under no obligation to pass it. Their job is to scrutinise and, if necessary, to block. And that's what I would encourage them to do. Many noble peers have spoken out against it already. The former Prime Minister, Baroness May, highlighted perfectly the reality of what this law means.
Finally, my lords, this is not an assisted dying bill. It is an assisted suicide bill.
And she's so right to say that, because the proponents of it think that the truth, assisted suicide, puts people off, so they try and use a euphemism. But why is this bill so dangerous? Well, first, it's wrong in principle. And second, the safeguards are illusory. The British Geriatric Society, Hospice UK, leading palliative care experts all warn that the system isn't equipped. 40% of hospices are planning cuts this year, and social care is heavily stretched. Yet we're being told this is the moment to introduce lethal drugs into the healthcare system. New Zealand legalised assisted suicide in 2021, and within the second year, cases rose 37% on the first year. Long-time Life campaigner Lord Alton, who will miss out on tomorrow's debate after being injured in a bus crash, has sent us this message highlighting the dangers of this legislation, as seen in other countries which have passed it.
Where assisted suicide has been legalised, however tight the initial safeguards, and however sincere the assurances that it would be a narrowly defined law for rare cases, the practice has tended to rapidly accelerate and expand. Sometimes this is by a clear expansion of the law, such as in the Netherlands and Belgium, where assisted deaths are now permitted even for children of all ages. But there's also a push in the Netherlands in allowing infant euthanasia for severely disabled babies. This isn't progressive, but regressive, a return to pre-civilization.
A return to pre-civilization. Well, just a fortnight ago, the bill's own sponsors were in Parliament with campaigners who want to expand the right to assist suicide to people who aren't terminally ill, even before the bill is passed. Once this principle is concluded, then this is the pattern that's followed in other countries. Assisted suicide is introduced for those with the worst illnesses, the hardest cases, the saddest cases. Then the law is relaxed, so that even mentally ill children are at risk. As well as issues of morality, the bill itself is a bad piece of legislation. The Lords Delegated Powers Committee called it a skeleton bill, which means that the details are not in the bill itself, not the bill passed by Parliament, but get made up later by secondary legislation. This hands ministers powers to regulate all sorts of aspects of it, including the lethal substances, with minimal parliamentary scrutiny. It's lawmaking by blank cheque, literally on life and particularly death. We also need to look at how the government has handled this, because in a very unusual move, it recalled the House of Lords during the recess, which has the effect of stopping some people from turning up. Normally, Lords' sitting dates are set well in advance, but this has been brought forward, something that's normally only done in the event of war or economic collapse. It's quite an improper way to be fiddling around, playing ducks and drakes with the House of Lords for a bill that is not one with the government's imprimatur. It is not a government bill. So, what we have to realise is that this is not about compassion. It's about killing. It's about death. Real compassion means helping people to live, better hospice care, proper support, not telling vulnerable people that they're a burden on society, a cost to the NHS, and they'd be better off dead. The Lords should reject this bill, not out of coldness, but out of real care for those most at risk. Assisted suicide is not the solution, and I hope tomorrow they will stop Britain from going down this evil path. As ever, let me know what you think, mailmog@gbnews.com. I'm now joined by writer and broadcaster, Rabbi Jonathan Romain. Rabbi, thank you for joining me again. I'm always interested to talk to you. Tomorrow is a really key day, and the House of Lords so far, the speeches have been more against than in favour. Do you get the feeling the House of Lords may vote the bill down?
Not at all, and I do have to correct a couple of things, if you don't mind. Firstly, it's not called the Assisted Suicide Bill. It is actually...
I know that, but that's just bogus, and we've discussed that. It's frightful humbug. Yeah, I will, but I've already said that was humbug, so I'm happy to say it again. Humbug.
Well, you'll have to, because it's very important for your listeners to realise it is only for people who are terminally ill. In other words, they are already dying, and what's more, they are dying in pain. And this bill is about saying to those people, if you are dying in pain and you would like to let go and say, thank you, God, it's been a great life, but I really don't want to carry on in agony, then they should have that right. And by the way, it's not a blank cheque. It's actually the democratic process, because the Parliament, the Commons, voted for it. And unless you want to undo the...
Okay, let's deal with those 2 points, because the first one...
I haven't finished,
Well, you've mentioned 2 points. Let's just discuss those, and then you can come back, because I really want to hear what you've got to say. But on the first point, on the question of assisted suicide, even if you are terminally ill, we're all going to die eventually, and you kill yourself, that is suicide. So it is assisted suicide. On the second point of blank cheque, I was talking... hold on, let me make those points, and then you can come back. On the point of blank cheque, I was making the point about how the legislation was written. And I know about how legislation is written, and people do bring forward skeleton bills, but they're a very bad form of legislation because they don't have proper scrutiny on the details. So you can answer those 2 points, if you will.
As a former MP, you don't trust the MPs and the will of Parliament. Is that what you're saying? I find that hard to believe. And by the way, if you believe in Brexit...
No, you're making an entirely different point, if I may, that there are bills that are well constructed and there are bills that are badly constructed. Now, well-constructed bills have the details within them, within the Act of Parliament. Badly constructed skeleton bills leave a lot to discretion afterwards. So that's the point about the blank cheque. It's not to do with whether the House of Commons passed it or not. That's a different question.
Which is exactly why there's an interim period of 4 years to make sure all those details are sorted out. And you need to emphasise how lucky we are, because we're not leaping into the dark. We're taking advantage of so many other countries and their different models. And you're quite right, there are some countries which wouldn't do the things that we're going to do. We're going to follow the Oregon model, which has always been terminally ill and has never had any slippage from that. This is a British bill for British values, and I would have thought that you would appreciate that we can do something that is for this country. And by the way, the doctors agree with me, because that's why the British Medical Association has gone from opposition to neutral, and not just them, the Royal Colleges.
Well, with respect, neutral doesn't mean they agree with you. If we can use language accurately, it means neutral.
It means it means they don't regard it as a heinous, vile bill. They regard it as something that every person has a right to decide. So that you and I, God forbid that we should end up in pain, we have the option of saying, yes, we're going to carry on to our last breath, or we can say, I just want to let go gently. Why aren't you giving people options? Why are you insisting? I mean, you can choose what you like for you and your family when your end comes, but why are you insisting that other people have to die in pain because of your principles? That doesn't seem to me either fair, arrogant, or even religious.
Well, first of all, because I think that it is important that people should be helped to live rather than be killed by the state. But you mentioned Oregon. When it started, there were 367 deaths. Now there are 2,847. There's been a massive increase of deaths in Oregon. And that is really, this becomes a rolling system. More and more people get killed, and they get killed because it's convenient for the state to get rid of the halt and the lame who are a cost to society.
But you need to add that's been over 27 years. In other words, a very new system has now become well known. And you also need to tell your listeners that the total number today is still 0.8% of all deaths in Oregon. In other words, it's still very, very minimal. And we're talking about
nearly 1% of deaths. Nearly 1% of deaths. Yeah, that's nearly 1%. That's a lot of deaths of people who are now being killed, sentenced to death effectively in Oregon. Anyway, thank you very much for joining me, because I'm now going to turn to my panel, the assistant editor of The Spectator, Madeline Grant, and the historian, Dr. Tessa Dunlop. Madeline, you were listening to that very carefully. The argument seems to me to be fundamentally flawed. It's not about choice, it's about the convenience of the state.
Yes, I agree with that. And also, we're not living in a world in which people are exercising a perfect choice in the way that it's sometimes framed by more liberal proponents of this legislation. We're existing in a world in which we have a very imperfect state of palliative care, in which people don't always get to have a death that is assisted by the necessary care at the end of their life. We have an NHS that is struggling and deeply dysfunctional, and we have already seen some of the dystopian decisions that were made by the NHS during COVID, for example, and the do not resuscitate orders. So into this very imperfect situation, how much of a choice is it necessarily going to be for everybody that would choose it? I also just want to push back on a few of the points that the rabbi made about Oregon in particular, because it's my understanding that even in Oregon, in which terminal conditions were specified, people have been put to death who had conditions for things like hernias, anorexia. Another finding that they had, so a range of different conditions that were not the kind of cancers and other classic terminal illnesses. Diabetes is another one. They've also seen suicide across the board rising, which really adds to my fear that when you cross a societal Rubicon in which we normalise something like this, it encourages people to devalue life in other ways and to think of suicide as a ready option.
That's a really important point, isn't it? You make suicide an ordinary choice for people and encourage more suicides. But also, the convenience of the state will be to encourage this because it will save money. And the thing that always worried me the most is that people coming to the end of their life will think that they are a burden, even if they've got good families, even if they've got supportive families, and it will be this self-imposed pressure that forces people to make a decision that they now fortunately don't have the option to take.
Several points I'd like to pick up, and just because I'm here as your token progressive, I'm afraid doesn't mean that
I absolutely accept that, and I know the left has, and indeed the right, have a whole range of views on this.
Because of my extensive work with extremely old veterans who are fated really beyond all other extremely old people because of their service in World War II, the ones I work with, so therefore they have often higher self-esteem than you might have in invisible extreme old age. I've seen the anguish they feel about this extended life. They have sometimes enjoyed, but other times endured, and the cost, the burden they are to society. And I say that even when I'm travelling with a veteran who's working with me and helping me promote a story and a book, and they still feel they're compelled to talk about this terrible sort of cost that they're imposing on society. So I'm acutely aware of that, more so than I think the legislators who have passed this through into the Lords. I'm also concerned, as a Democrat, I'm prepared to say, oh, well, if most people want it, let's look at that. But in fact, according to polling, there's now more compunction to mend the end-of-life care, to deliver that first and then second, the right to choose about how you end your life. However, all that said, Jacob, I find the language you use deeply unhelpful, framing it as an evil bill. I think it's very unfair to suggest that Kim Leadbeater brought this to the floor of the House with evil intent. I don't believe she did for one moment.
No, not, but it is evil because it kills people, and killing people is wrong.
But
there are some absolutes,
but, you know,
Tessa.
That is where I have to part company with you.
Kill.
Yeah, I know, but in this case, you're empowering somebody with the right to decide about their own life. And if we look at that raft of progressive legislation that comes in the late 50s through to the 60s, it included decriminalising suicide, which we still say committed suicide because it used to be illegal. And I think it's OK to concede that somebody in a physical state that we can't even begin to imagine should be, at least on a moral level, allowed to consider taking their own life.
I'm afraid I think it is unequivocally evil, and I hope the House of Lords doesn't go for evil tomorrow. Anyway, thanks to the Rabbi and indeed to my panel. Coming up in just a moment. A bit later, with people giving their views on Mr. Sir Keir Starmer. Anyway, Donald Trump concluded his state visit by joining the Prime Minister at Chequers today, and as always, we've heard all about Britain's famous alliance with the United States. Does America really care? Is the special relationship something to be nurtured, or is the US just too ruthless to do anything other than pursue its own interests?
Decisions made in Washington aren't just shaping America, they're shaping Britain too. From migration to global security, from crime to health. Whatever happens in the White House today
will be felt in your town or city tomorrow.
That's why The Late Show is live from Washington, D.C.
Cutting through the politics to show you what it all means for Britain.
The Late Show Live starts Monday night at midnight.
Only on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
every Sunday from 11. Join Michael Portillo.
There'll be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News Breakfast, every day from 6 a.m.
So, it is really, really tough, but it's also tough for people who are blind, people who are like pushing buggies, wheelchair users. I mean, my late father was a wheelchair user, and, back in the day, we'd have to sort of get him off the road, and then we'd be in the road, and then we'd have to get him back up onto the pavement again. And that's a big price to pay for somebody who's not prepared to walk around the block and thinks they have the right to, park on the pavement.
Maria, how do you think it should work? Do you think this needs to be a national ban on pavement parking, or do you think it should be led by councils, so councils decide area by area where you're allowed to park?
I think it should be a mix. I think what we should do is have a blanket ban on pavement parking, and then what councils can do is, there's certain roads, there's one here in Exeter where the road is very narrow and the pavements are very wide. I'm not quite sure why, but it's perfectly safe to park on there. So like a street like that would be fine. And I think one of the problems at the moment is legislation. It's just so unclear, because there's this rule which says that you must not park on the pavement in London and Scotland, but you should not do it elsewhere. So it becomes a bit of a moral maze. And I think that, just to make that clearer about what people should do, because a lot of people sort of think, well, I can do it. And of course, traffic wardens can't do anything about it.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Exciting news. Every Friday, my Patrick Christie's Tonight Show is going to have a twist to it. We're welcoming some special guests. You. That's right, on Fridays I'm going to be doing my show in front of a live studio audience, because this show is about you and what you have to say. It's going to be the same big debates, same big topics, same big opinions. But every Friday night at 9 p.m, you are invited to come on down to Patrick Christie's Tonight to be a part of the action. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
As President Donald Trump concluded his state visit by joining the Prime Minister at Chequers today, Britain's special relationship with the United States is again at the forefront of the minds of politicians and the media. Yesterday, GB News' Ben Leo went out and spoke to Americans about what they think of Sir Keir Starmer and the state visit.
Hello, Ben Leo here on the streets of Washington, D.C., asking the local Americans if they know who this chap is.
I don't.
Yes, I do.
Who's that?
Your Prime Minister, Keir Starmer.
He looks like he's confused.
Keir Starmer, he's our Prime Minister of the UK.
I don't.
Never heard of him. All right, thanks, man.
It's important for America and the UK to stay close.
Yeah.
And I have fears about that not continuing.
And what do Americans think of the special relationship? Polling by Emerson College in Boston, Massachusetts, found Americans still view Britain as its most important strategic partner. But is Washington simply too ruthless in pursuing its own interests for the relationship to matter that much? Well, I'm joined now by the director of the UK-US Special Relationship Unit at Prosperity Institute, Sarah Elliott, and my panel, the assistant editor at The Spectator, Madeline Grant, and the historian, Dr. Tessa Dunlop. Thank you very much for coming in, Sarah. We all want in Britain there to be a special relationship because America's the most powerful country in the world. But isn't the special relationship special when it suits America and we go and help in Iraq, and not very special when Ronald Reagan invades Grenada and can't be bothered to tell the Queen?
Oh, I don't think so. I think we benefit from intelligence sharing, from military cooperation. I mean, there are certain channels of intelligence that only the British get and only the Americans get between it. I mean, it is the British and the Americans that undergird peace and stability in the West. And what I think about this visit is it continues it for the next generation.
But is it? Because even in Iraq, where the British were supportive, America sent many tens, if not hundreds of thousands of men, and we sent about 3 people in a camel. I mean, the proportions are pretty minimal.
Yes, but if I may, you all punch above your weight very well, as in the British do. They give a great deal to history and to the foundations of America itself. I mean, from the Magna Carta and the common law and the Judeo-Christian traditions. I mean, America sees the UK as an extension of their history, the motherland. We have very close ties there. I mean, some people even argue historically that the American Revolution was actually a civil war within the United Kingdom because the Americans felt they were fighting for true British values against a German king. So I think that there's a lot more there, and obviously many people can trace their ancestry back to the United Kingdom.
Well, back and forth, because I can trace it.
Yes,
I have an American
right.
forebear. And the issue is, how personal is it that the one thing that is impressive about Keir Starmer is that he manages to get on with Donald Trump. The one thing impressive about Tony Blair was that he managed to get on with both Clinton and Bush Jr. Quite an achievement, considering their differences. The relationship with Obama and Biden was nothing like as good. Does that really define it, that it depends who the personalities are, or is it deeper than that?
I mean, I think it's deeper, but it does genuinely help when there is more of a comfort level of familiarity. You could see it with the exchanges of the women over the course of the last couple of days, even the men, and the speeches last night were incredibly personal and touching. And the way that President Trump extended to the Prince William and Princess Kate, I mean, there's a clear desire to continue with the succession of the royal family. And President Trump said it was his highest honor. He's been elected president twice now, and this was his highest honor.
Yeah.
That'll
annoy a few voters, won't it?
But I think I know it's hard for the British to understand the esteem that the Americans hold them, but it is because of these long historical links. And we have seen, as the president said today, 7 wars together, fighting side by side. And so long may it continue. We have a tradition of keeping, things rolling and preserving Western civilization. And I think we're under a lot of attack right now.
Let me bring my panel in. I think the special relationship is crucially important from a British point of view, that we have as good a relationship with America as we can. But we need to remember that we shouldn't be sentimental about it, and that most of the time, Americans are not thinking about the UK.
Yeah, I mean, I was reminded of that when I tapped into my American friends and they said, yeah, we went really big on your ceremony on all our channels yesterday. But as for the flamor of the political conversations today, switch off. Actually, it's a bit like Casanova striding in, picking off the prettiest girls, having his way with them, and the next day going, thanks for that, it was great, made me look really good. Boom. And off he goes on to the next stop. Don't get me wrong, I don't think Starmer had any choice. He did an effective conjuring trick. He held Trump in the room, and we cannot afford to lose our friendship with America. But where can we go next? We've detonated our biggest crown jewel. Doesn't get any better. And there's another 3+ years of that.
Everyone will switch off if you go on about that boring subject. Madeleine, let me bring you in, because Donald Trump will go home. We haven't actually done that well on tariffs. We've done a bit better than the EU. We've got some deals, but most deals announced at summits were ones that were going to happen anyway. It doesn't really move the dial, does it? And Donald Trump hasn't changed where he stands on Ukraine.
No, although actually his words about Putin at the conference today were interesting and will be seen by many as a victory for Starmer. Whether they had anything to do with pressure from Keir Starmer himself or more to do with Donald Trump's failure to get Putin around a table and agree something is another matter, but I think it will be framed as a victory. I think that essentially President Trump wanted to come to Britain primarily to see the royal family, to enjoy the slight vanity coup of the unprecedented extra state visit that no one else had, as we were reminded many, many times over the last...
Lord Harold of Norway had lots of stuff, but
yes.
He's different.
He showed his age. He repeated that so often,
yes, he did. And so did Keir Starmer, and so did everyone that was trying to butter him up. I mean, I think that Donald Trump's view of these things is a rather magpie-like tendency. He views in Britain would interest him per se, but I think you're right about the special relationship. It's important not to be too sentimental and not also to get too sort of misty-eyed about the times when we have worked together, such as the Second World War, but to forget, and we never talk about Suez, we never talk about Lend-Lease. You mentioned Grenada earlier, and we don't talk about that enough either.
Or Vietnam, we didn't join America.
No, and thank goodness, one of Harold Wilson's best decisions.
But Sarah, I just want to bring you back, because Donald Trump is a highly intelligent, able man. It's really interesting. He doesn't do this flummery because the most exciting thing in his life is flummery. He does it because it plays in Piora. And this must therefore be something that is popular with his electorate. They think better of him because he's in a carriage with the King of England.
Yes, probably to a certain extent. But I think you all, I'm very sorry, but I think you all are very cynical about all of this. and I know Americans wear their heart on their sleeves a bit more than the British do, but there is something bigger going on here. Donald Trump is trying to reform the team, trying to get the team back together to face China and to face the foes of the West. And America is America first right now under Donald Trump, but it's not America alone. And we need our best ally in the world to actually be strong enough and can compete with China and be a good partner. And the only reason those CEOs were in the UK this week is because of Donald Trump,
all right,
by the way.
And we're going to talk about China in a moment, actually. Well, Sarah, Lady Elliot of Micklefell, thank you very much. She works for the Prosperity Institute. The Prosperity Institute is owned by the Legatum Group. The Legatum Group is one of the leading investors in the holding company of GBNews, so well done them. Thank you very much also to my panel in a moment.
China, 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 China.
Well, my old China, should Donald Trump have used his UK state visit to confront the Chinese threat? It comes as prosecutors drop espionage charges, including against two men, including a former parliamentary researcher accused of spying for Peking. Does President Trump have a role to play in keeping the West safe?
Dinner under the stars tonight?
That reminds me of our travel insurance.
You mean all clear skies?
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News travel destinations forecast.
A northerly breeze bringing a slightly cooler feel to some of the Greek islands for the next day or so. Meanwhile, in the Canaries, temperatures above average, over 30 degrees through Friday and Saturday. One or two showers over northern Spain, but most of the beaches dry, fine and sunny, and some lovely sunshine to be had across Italy. Sunny in Greece. As I said, there is a bit of a breeze blowing. Temperature will be rising in Santorini as we go through the weekend. At the same time, we'll see those temperatures dropping off a bit in Tenerife.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News travel destinations forecast.
Hello again, very good evening to you. I'm here with your GB News weather forecast from the Met Office. Whilst tomorrow is going to be quite warm and humid across parts of the southeast, a bigger talking point perhaps is a stalling band of rain that's going to continue to linger across some parts of northern England and parts of Wales, all due to this trailing front that's going to hang around for a little while yet. So outbreaks of rain overnight across, yes, northern England, parts of North Wales, pushing into some southern parts of Scotland as well. There will also be a bit more rain over northern parts of Scotland too, but elsewhere actually a lot of dry weather, some clear skies as well. Towns and cities, yes, generally holding up in the mid-teens Celsius, but some rural spots could just about dip into single figures. And then through tomorrow morning, a bit of a damp start across some parts of Scotland, the far north for example, but that rain and the more blustery winds will be clearing away through the morning. Then a few showers across western Scotland, but many places starting the day dry here. Similar across Northern Ireland. However, southern parts of the Borders area and also northern parts of England a bit wet with some outbreaks of rain, and similar across parts of northwest Wales. Elsewhere across the rest of England and Wales, it's a largely dry start and there will be some decent sunshine around as well. And then we end up with this sort of three-way split in our weather. Still this trailing, lingering front across parts of northern England, southern Scotland and the far tip of northwest Wales, and that rain could pep up at times as we go through the afternoon. Elsewhere it's looking largely dry, often and bright and sunny, and in the southeast, pretty humid with temperatures peaking around 26 or 27 Celsius. That front continues to linger in a similar area as we go through into Saturday, although it will have pushed a little bit more across parts of central and southwestern England and across much of Wales. High rainfall totals building up. Some places could see up to 100 millimetres, so some impacts as a result of that. The more unsettled weather does clear away as we go through into Sunday and Monday, so things drier by then.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation, isn't it? Because the failure is...
You're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back.
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
And we do not shy away from the difficult stuff.
Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood.
So join me on Jubes & Co. weeknights at 6 p.m, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
Well, should Donald Trump have used his state visit to talk about the threat from China? Earlier today, the Prime Minister said the UK and the USA are the first partners in defence.
Renewed the special relationship for a new era. The United Kingdom and the United States stand together today as first partners on defence.
But earlier this week, prosecutors dropped charges against two men, including a parliamentary researcher, accused of spying for Peking. While the Crown Prosecution Service said the case didn't meet the threshold of trial, ministers maintain the allegations are gravely concerning. With Westminster in fear of Chinese espionage, does Donald Trump and the United States need to put more pressure on us to encourage us to confront China in the way he has been doing? Well, I'm delighted to be joined now by the member of the House of Representatives for North Carolina's 10th District and the member of the Four Country Caucus, Congressman Pat Harrigan. Congressman, thank you so much for joining me. We've been discussing the special relationship, but it seems to me one bit of the special relationship that isn't functioning is that the US is much more realistic about the threat posed by China than the UK is, and that the UK is still cozying up to China. Do you think we ought to change tack?
Jacob, thanks for having me on. It's great to be with you. And yes, I do think that the UK needs to get serious about China. I actually had the opportunity to speak at the London Defence Conference earlier this year, and it was my takeaway that the UK is still unwilling to confront China as it must. It needs to very clearly see China for the threat that it is taking actions that are completely averse to the interests of any country in the West, certainly the United States, but absolutely the UK. And that they play a full spectrum game. They are not just a military threat, but they actually pursue their interests that are averse to our own interests through manipulated economics. And I think it's time that we all have open eyes and understand this.
It's very important because they've got a lot of money and they use it to buy influence. They use it to sponsor other states, effectively, smaller states. And there's this looming threat to Taiwan, which would threaten global security fundamentally. And what can we do to try and keep China boxed in?
Well, I think, number one, we have to work together, right? And I think that was the point of President Trump's second trip. And this is why I think the invitation from the UK to President Trump this second time around was really groundbreaking and historic because, number one, it's a recognition that both sides understand that they need each other, and they need each other in very consequential ways. And second, the timing of this, I don't think is a mistake. I think it's very, very intentional. We understand that as conflict has grown around the world, it does not appear that Putin wants to put down his arms in Ukraine, that we have a much greater chance with incursions into other NATO countries of drones, penetrations of military material that before the last couple of weeks we have not seen. that this unified front, this new axis of evil that we are seeing develop and coalesce around the world is a direct threat to Western civilization and the way of life and the world order as we have known it. And the very foundation of that world order is a very strong US-UK relationship.
Well, I very much agree with what you've been saying about Russia. And one of the worries from the UK is that President Trump isn't tough enough on Putin, and that will help the Chinese think that they might be able to get away with more because Putin has.
So I think part of that is a very relevant statement. And I think the second half of it is maybe not so much, because I think of the work that we are doing on a day-to-day basis to confront China and make sure that Taiwan is an absolute porcupine that makes China think not once, not twice, but truly 3 times, and ultimately decides to actually have a deterrent effect by not deciding to invade Taiwan because we made it so difficult for that to happen. Simultaneously, I do think President Trump has pursued the best interests of the United States and the West by trying to get President Putin to stop the war in Ukraine. That is certainly in everybody's strategic interest. But as we learned in the military, and as my friends in the UK military know, the enemy gets a vote, and we have to be responsive to the enemy.
And one of the things the right in Britain are concerned about is the government giving away the Chagos Islands, which seems to be a risk in terms of the US security against China. Donald Trump effectively has a veto. Would you be encouraging him to use that to try and ensure that the Chagos Islands and the airbase there remain safe?
Yeah, there's no question, right? We cannot give China an inch, and we cannot intimate to them that they can take an inch. That's exactly the problem set that we have been dealing with since the fall of Afghanistan, which frankly gave a green light to Putin to go into Ukraine. We do not want to give that same green light inch by inch to Xi Jinping. We cannot allow that to happen.
Congressman, thank you very much indeed for joining me. In today's book club, if you've ever wondered why rats can influence elections and if fish and chips can indicate voting habits, then Professor Philip Cowley's new book, The Smallest Room in the House, is one you will want to read.
Britain was once the envy of the world. But look around. A nation that no longer knows what it is or where it's going. A country that's broken. How do we fix Britain? How do we bring it back? Friday night with Matt Goodwin at 8 p.m, only on GB News.
It's Patrick Christie's Tonight, and here we do things differently.
It's explaining the absolute madness of this, doesn't it?
It's explosive.
I mean, this is very good.
It's lively.
850. Your government sat there, Sean, and it did nothing.
It's controversial.
And the Middle East has been in turmoil since before I was born.
It's everything you need to kickstart your evening.
Everyone's had their Weetabix tonight. I love to see it.
That's Patrick Christie's Tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation,
No,
because the failure is
you're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back.
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
And we do not shy away from the difficult stuff.
Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood.
So join me on Jubes & Co. weeknights at 6 p.m, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
From the school run to the home run, watch a new show for all of Britain.
So he can say whatever he wants.
A straight-talking show where all voices are heard.
And, you know, when are we going to stop talking about smashing the gangs and actually do it?
With the stories that matter from every part of our country.
There's a bit of a crash landing there for your Chancellor.
Bold, fearless and standing up for you. That's me, Martin Daubney, 3 p.m. till 6 p.m, weekdays, here only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Akwe, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, you didn't say that, Dave.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
At GB News, we love to hear from you, our loyal community. So drop us a line at gbnews.com/yoursay. There you can talk to each other and also to the presenters live on air. gbnews.com/yoursay, because GB News is your channel, Britain's news channel.
It's time now for the book club. In today's book club, we examine the quirks of British politics in Professor Philip Cowley's excellent new book, The Smallest Room in the House, from why rats can influence elections to how fish and chips might reveal our voting habits. Professor Cowley uncovers 50 oddities that shape the way our system works, and you may never look at politics the same way again. I'm absolutely delighted to have Philip Cowley joining me for his new book, The Smallest Room in the House, which is a wonderful collection of political essays, which you modestly title on the basis it might be a downstairs cloakroom book. I think it's very much an immediate reading book. How did it come about?
Well, it's very kind of you to say that, because when I pitched it to the publishers, obviously I wanted them to say, this is going to win a Pulitzer and be Book of the Year. And they came back to me and said it's going to make a brilliant toilet book. So I'm glad that you can see there's more to it than that. But I think it will be read by people in the downstairs smallest room in the house, because it's lots of small chapters. It originates in an series of articles I wrote for the House magazine, in which I tried to take academic research, which people like you or me or many of your viewers would find really interesting, but which they don't know about. And they don't know about it because it's buried away in academic journals or books, and try to show them how actually politics can be really interesting and revealing.
And absolutely surprising. One of the things that really astonished me was that AI is now allowing people to study newspapers in the 19th century. And we now discover that at general elections there were riots all over the country, organised by the political parties themselves. It wasn't this gentle evolution of democracy to the perfect state.
We have this view, I think, that politics now is getting very tense and fractious. My word, you go back and look at 19th century elections, we have a long way to go before they're anything like as violent. In 1868, for example, there was something like 20 deaths as part of the political violence of that election, and multiple riots. And that's true of almost all Victorian elections. Not just that there are more fights in Parliament than you might expect, but that where they happen is in countries where the political system is usually going through change. If Parliament's established and democracy is established, you don't get very many fights. You tend to get it either where there's democratic backsliding or where parliaments are going from, say, a system of being in an autocracy to being more important. Then tensions really do burst through. As late as the early 20th century, you have MPs in the chamber offering each other out in formal duels.
And you have, of course, Canning and Castlereagh fighting
fighting a duel, yes.
When they were both members of the Cabinet.
Yes, yes.
And even though the Cabinet may be at 6s and 7s today and 5 years ago, it's not quite that bad.
Quite shooting at each other yet. And you're right, that research is only really possible now because newspaper archives from the time have been digitised, and so you can now search them in a way that you couldn't previously. Historians previously would have had to have hundreds of research assistants crawling through the archives. Now it can be done by, still with a fair amount of work, but it's manageable to search literally billions of words.
And the way voters engage with and are linked to parties, again, I was very interested that your research shows that leaflets matter and that voters want to be connected by leaflet, because I think the modernisers, the gurus in political parties, think it's all about social media, it's all about modern campaigning techniques. But you find that on the ground, delivering hundreds of leaflets is important.
I think people that go out in the pouring rain armed with a sort of thick coat and a huge stack of leaflets are much more important than a lot of people realise. Now, the interesting thing about that research is there is about a third of voters, if you say to them, how would you most like political parties to talk to you, say, we don't want them to talk to us at all. Of the other 2/3 of people, by far the most common form of contact people want is a leaflet. They want something pushed through their letterbox which they can read.
How much should one believe the third of people who say they never want to be contacted? And I take the view that when they have those signs saying no junk mail, that a general election is different, that it is part of the democratic process, and I ring the bell anyway. I have never had anybody say, why are you ringing my bell? They always want to engage when they've got the candidate on the door. Do you think people pretend they're less interested in politics than they really are?
In one sense, yes, in the sense that you find, you can engage some of these people. In the other sense, however, there's often a sense that people claim to be interested in politics but actually then don't follow through. So you always find the percentage of people saying that they will vote at an election is higher than the percentage you actually do. It's worth remembering there is a decent chunk of people who are effectively disengaged from the formal political process now.
And you have a wonderful, terrifying figure that in an election in the 1960s, people were asked if they could name 2 important issues, and 40% of people couldn't...
They couldn't name them.
Couldn't name 2 issues.
They couldn't name the issues. I mean, again, it's another really good example. I'm sort of fed up of reading stuff about how today's voters are not really understanding what's going on in politics. Go back and look at the very first British election study in 1964. It found, as you say, that about 40% of the public asked to name important issues facing the country couldn't even name them. They didn't have to do anything with them. They didn't have to say where they stood on the issues or where they thought the party stood on the issues or what they'd like to see done about the issues. They just had to name them, and 40% couldn't do that. Voted for other parties.
Yes. Well, Philip, thank you very much indeed. It's been a great pleasure to interview you for the book club, and I would recommend The Smallest Room in the House to anyone interested in politics. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
The Smallest Room in the House, 50 political oddities to read in more than one sitting by Professor Philip Cowley, is available now from all good bookshops, no doubt from Mr. Amazon as well. And you'll be able to see the full interview on GB News' digital platform. And I would, but Philip Cowley is such an interesting man. And finally, is the term dead as a dodo about to become as dead as a dodo itself? Because a Texas biotech company has managed to create the building blocks for a dodo resurrection, along with the woolly mammoth and the Tasmanian tiger. I'm personally very fond of the dodo. I used to know lots of them well and had a pet dodo in my youth, and I'd be absolutely delighted to have the opportunity to adopt another, and perhaps a saber-toothed tiger as well. Anyway, that's all from me. I'm heading off to Somerset in a moment. Next is Nana Akua in for Patrick Christie's. Nana, what is on your programme this evening?
Hello, Jacob. Thank you very much. Well, look, we had a momentous day today, and there were still people who appeared to have such visceral hatred for Donald Trump, despite us getting a huge tech trade deal and all the things that Donald Trump has brought to this country. So why is that? We'll be looking into that. Plus, has Keir Starmer done enough? As you saw him, this is a very civil, very well-mannered press conference and meeting. So in your eyes, has he done enough? And then we'll be looking at DEI. Is DEI destroying the NHS? All of that coming up. Do not go anywhere. But first up, let's get an update with your weather.
Today's outlook: cool, calm and completely horizontal. Boxed Aircon sponsors the weather on GB News.
Hello again, very good evening to you. I'm here with your GB News weather forecast from the Met Office. Whilst tomorrow is going to be quite warm and humid across parts of the southeast, a bigger talking point perhaps is a stalling band of rain that's going to continue to linger across some parts of northern England and parts of Wales, all due to this trailing front that's going to hang around for a little while yet. So outbreaks of rain overnight across, yes, northern England, parts of North Wales, pushing into some southern parts of Scotland as well. There will also be a bit more rain over northern parts of Scotland too, but elsewhere actually a lot of dry weather, some clear skies as well. Towns and cities, yes, generally holding up in the mid-teens Celsius, but some rural spots could just about dip into single figures. And then through tomorrow morning, a bit of a damp start across some parts of Scotland, the far north for example, but that rain and the more blustery winds will be clearing away through the morning. Then a few showers across western Scotland, but many places starting the day dry here. Similar across Northern Ireland. However, southern parts of the Borders area and also northern parts of England a bit wet with some outbreaks of rain, and similar across parts of northwest Wales. Elsewhere across the rest of England and Wales, it's a largely dry start and there will be some decent sunshine around as well. And then we end up with this sort of three-way split in our weather. Still this trailing, lingering front across parts of northern England, southern Scotland and the far tip of northwest Wales, and that rain could pep up at times as we go through the afternoon. Elsewhere it's looking largely dry, often bright and sunny, and in the southeast pretty humid with temperatures peaking around 26 or 27 Celsius. That front continues to linger in a similar area as we go through into Saturday, although it will have pushed a little bit more across parts of central and southwestern England and across much of Wales. High rainfall totals building up. Some places could see up to 100 millimetres, so some impacts as a result of that. The more unsettled weather does clear away as we go through into Sunday and Monday, so things drier by then.
Today's outlook: cool, calm and completely horizontal. Boxed Aircon sponsors the weather on GB News.
It's our biggest Great British giveaway to date. You could be driving away with this brand new Benamar Primera motorhome. This 4-berth home from home comes complete with integrated kitchen and bathroom areas and has all of the tech you'd expect from the latest 2025 model. We'll also give you an incredible £30,000 in tax-free cash to make sure that any adventures you take in your new motorhome are taken in style. For a chance to win, text WIN to 63225. One entry costs £2.50 plus one standard network rate message, or text BONUS to 63225. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start at £2.50. Call 0903 686 3232. Calls cost £2.50 plus your network access charge. Or post your name and number to GB16 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 4 p.m. on the 31st of October. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand.
Miriam, you can't be serious. Scrapping the triple lock on state pensions? Madness.
Andrew, we just can't carry on pretending. The numbers just don't add up. We've got to be honest with people. We've got to face the facts. That's what people want.
Well, that's what you get on GB News and on Britain's Newsroom. Lively debates, lively conversation.
Britain deserves a newsroom that puts the facts and your voice first, and we're not afraid to hold power to account.
And each other. So join me, Andrew Pearce.
And me, Miriam Gates, for Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's News Channel.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's News.